Hi. Welcome to session 10 of the Microeconomics Theory class. Session 10 of this course is going to look at perfect competition in the short run. So for perfect competition, we're going to have two topics. One in the short run, and the next session, we'll look at perfect competition in the long run. Now, given that it is desirable property, perfect competition is usually for comparison with other market structures. This session presents an introduction to market structures and perfect competition. It also looks at profit maximization condition of a firm as well as perfect competitive short-run equilibrium of the firm. This session will be divided broadly into two parts. We will have an introduction to market structure and also perfect competitive market. And at that, we're going to look at what is a market structure and also what is a perfect competitive market. Then we will try and see competition in the short run, where we look at we try to derive the demand curve for the perfect competitive firm and see how the perfect competitive firm maximizes profit, and also derive the supply curve for the perfect competitive firm. And in this, we're going to look at both the individual supply curve as well as the market supply curve. Then also we will try to determine the competitive industry equilibrium. Now, for this session, after this session, you should be able to explain the concept of market structure. Tell what are the characteristics of market structure. How do we categorize a market? You must be able to know this. Then also, you must be able to understand the assumptions underlying the perfect competitive market structure. Then also, you should be able to outline how competitive firms maximize profits in the short run, and also explain the demand curve and the supply curve for the perfect competitive market. And finally, you should be able to determine the competitive equilibrium in the short run. For this session, we are going to use Perloff textbook, that is the 6th edition, and also variant, that is the variant 2014 edition. And also the slides are available on Sakai, and also you can fall on any other intermediate microeconomic textbook. So let's start with market structure. The question is, what is a market structure? What do we mean by market structure? It explains how firms in the market behave based on the market demand. It is defined by the characteristics that influence the behavior and outcomes of firms in the market. So in other words, the activities and behavior of firms will lead to an outcome, and this outcome will help us to classify a market. And these are the structures that we are looking at. There are several market structures. One is perfect competitive market or perfect competition, and also we have imperfect market. Under imperfect market, we can talk about monopoly, we can talk about monopolistic competition market, we can talk about oligopoly. Now, the structure of the market is determined by the following factors. Factors such as the number of economic agents, and that is, we are making reference to the number of buyers and sellers in the market. Also, we're looking at the next point is the relative negotiation strength of economic agents in the market. That is, whether the firms you have the ability to set their prices or they take price as given in the market. Then also the degree of concentration among economic agents will help us determine the structure of the market. Another factor that will determine the structure is whether the products produced in the market happens to be differentiated or it is homogeneous. The products are homogeneous, we are going to classify the market separately compared to a market where the products are differentiated. And also the degree of barrier to entry and exit will influence the market structure, or will determine market structure. Now, with us understanding what a market structure is and what influences or determines the structure of the market, let's start with the first one, which is perfectly competitive market structure. When a firm is faced with competition in a market, then that market is said to be a competitive market. And firms in that market are seen as competitive firms. In this regard, a perfect competitive market is a market in which there are a large number of competitive firms, such that it is difficult to single out a firm as an opponent. In other words, there are so many firms in the market that a firm forms an insignificant proportion of the entire market. In other words, whatever this single firm does in the market, that firm cannot affect market outcome. So if we have a firm, say firm A, and that firm, for example, decides not to produce in the market again, the action of this firm is not going to affect market price. And perfect competition occurs where firms have no market power, hence do not react to each other. So even though we are saying that this is a competitive firm, a firm knows that its rival's action cannot affect the market outcome, so it doesn't bother itself. So indirectly, there is virtually no competition in this market. Rather, firms are not going to compete among themselves, but then will compete over output. Examples of perfect competitive markets include market for agricultural produce, stock exchange markets, retail and wholesale markets, among others. As you know by now, in economics, when we want to build models, we need to make assumptions. So here there are some assumptions underlying perfect competitive markets. One is, the firms in this market do sell homogeneous products or identical products. Homogeneous products in the sense that firm A's product cannot be distinguished from that of firm B. The branding and everything of that commodity happens to be the same across all firms. There are a large number of sellers and buyers in this market. There are so many sellers of the commodity to the point that a firm output or a firm's action does not affect market outcome, as already stated. And again, a buyer's action will not affect market outcome because there are several buyers and sellers. And each buyer or seller forms an insignificant proportion of the entire market. There is also the freedom of entry and exit. In other words, a firm can enter the market and exit the market without incurring any cost. Again, there is full information in this market. In other words, there is perfect knowledge of the market. Producers know exactly the composition of the products for their rivals and also their own products. So also buyers also know everything about the product and they know the price that exists on the market. And also there is a low cost of transaction in this market. Then there is also perfect mobility of the factors of production. But one thing that we should note is that the first two assumptions, that is, a large number of buyers and sellers and also homogeneous products, makes this market, or firms make these firms in the market price takers. That is, they take price as given by the market. In other words, the market demand and market supply will determine price. And when the price is determined in the market, these firms are going to work with it and they take the price as given. Hence, there is no incentive to lower price for a good, since the firm can sell as many goods as possible at the market price. And if the firm should also increase its price, since there is also so many buyers and sellers and their product, and the product on the market is, you cannot identify, the product on the market happens to be homogeneous. And also remember, we've said that we've assumed that there is perfect knowledge. So if you increase your price as a firm, no one is going to purchase your commodity, because the consumer knows exactly where they get the commodity at a cheaper price. Perfect competitive firms face a demand curve that is horizontal. That is, perfect elastic demand curve at the existing market price. And this is as a result of the first two assumptions. The choice of a quantity of output to sell has no effect on the price, because we've already said that the firm forms an insignificant proportion of the market. Therefore, the firm can sell as many units of the goods as possible at the existing price. So to maximize profit, a firm sought to produce an output level that equates the marginal cost to the marginal revenue, where the marginal revenue equals to the price of the commodity. Also, the marginal cost must be rising, or by producing nothing if the average cost exceeds the price at all output. So the firm maximizes profit at a point where the marginal cost is equal to the marginal revenue. But note that the marginal cost must be rising, because we've said that the marginal cost is U-shaped. It falls, reaches a minimum, and starts to rise. So the rising portion of the marginal cost, when it's equal to the marginal revenue, then the firm maximizes profit. Therefore, a perfect competitive firm is a quantity adjuster facing a perfectly elastic demand curve at a given market price, and maximizes profit by choosing the output that equates marginal cost to the marginal revenue. So we have your horizontal demand curve to be D, and it's equal to the average revenue, and it's equal to the marginal revenue, and equal to the price. Our demand curve is horizontal, and the demand curve is equal to the average revenue, equal to the marginal revenue, and equal to the price. And this we can mathematically prove that yes, our demand curve is the same as the marginal revenue and the average revenue, as well as equal to the price. We know that our total revenue is given by the price times the quantity. So that means that our total revenue, our average revenue, is equal to the total revenue divided by quantity. But we know total revenue to be equal to the price multiplied by quantity. So price multiplied by quantity divided by quantity will give us price. That means that our average revenue is equal to price. Again, our marginal revenue also is equal to the price of the commodity. And we can see that our marginal revenue is the change in total revenue divided by a change in output. And our total revenue, if you have your demand function to be that, and you differentiate the total revenue, you're going to have, with respect to output, you're going to have it to be equal to price. So our price is equal to marginal revenue and equal to what? Average revenue in that case. Even though the individual demand is horizontal, the market demand is not horizontal. We sum up all the individual demand curves, and that is going to give us a horizontal summation of all the individual demand curves. It's going to give us a market demand curve, and it gives us a downward sloping demand curve. So even though a firm's action cannot affect market outcome, or a consumer's action cannot affect market outcome, several consumers coming together, their action can affect the market outcome, because it will then change price. Thus, downward sloping demand curve depicts a negative relationship between the price and quantity. At higher price, consumers will purchase a lesser quantity of the good, and at a lower price, they will purchase a higher amount of the good.